So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Love Juice.
The other day our producer Louis had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithm really aren't that happy if a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we can text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track Xtra. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology. This young lady here is Lilith Tinkerbell, who is the most important cat of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, or so she instructed me to say. And here, down below, if I can get it, is Archie, the CFZ dog, who is fast asleep. In fact, his real name is Archibald Archimedes the Archimandrite. But Archie will do, because we don't want him to get too above his station. Well, every Wednesday evening at 6:30 and every Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we bring you a general mishmash, miscellany, and I had more of them the other day. I had a long list of nice alliterative words which describe what we do and which begin with M. But we bring you all these things about hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality? Well, I've told you enough times. I think you really need to ask the cat.
Surreality is a juxtaposition of unexpected objects to bring the sheer peculiarity of life up into bas relief.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've had 2 letters awaiting for me from the butterfly conservation people, who are very nice fellows and who publish a fascinating magazine every 3 months. Somehow I've got 2 of these letters, which must mean that I really haven't opened them and talked to you about butterfly conservation for the last 6 months. I can't believe that's true, but let's have a look and see what's inside. By the way, thank you, Lilith, for your succinct analysis of the concept of surreality, and thank you very much because you put it better than I could have done myself. And for some reason, on the back of this envelope, Richard Freeman has drawn a picture of Hitler dressed as a pig. But I'm not quite sure why he did that, and he's not here, so I can't ask him. First of all, here we have, this is very interesting, it's the annual impact report, which is something that I think probably deserves serious examination. It is dispatched to me. I'm going to have to take my glasses off because it's too close. I've got reading glasses and I don't use them for reading because I use them for the computer, but reading actually paper or even on my iPad is easier to do. It's easier to do without them. And it's written by 2 ladies, Karen Goldie Morrison, the Butterfly Conservation Chair, and Julie Williams, Butterfly Conservation CEO. Now, call me old-fashioned, I'm not being sexist. I quite understand why these days the chairperson is called a chair, but that always makes me think that I'm reading a catalogue of furniture. A chairman and a chairwoman are, of course, equal, and I'm not going to be sexist by demanding somebody to use the term one or another, but I wish they'd use chairperson rather than chair, because that does, I'm afraid, annoy me, and I'm becoming an irritable old man. But let's have a look and see what we've got. Wow, starting off, there is a picture here which is, I think, the best picture I've ever seen of a lobster moth caterpillar. And you can tell, let me see, I'm never any good for lining these up, you can tell why this creature is called a lobster moth. Absolutely beautiful picture by somebody called Les Evans Hill. Now, there has been a butterfly conservation-led research project investigating biodiversity in a conifer-dominated forestry at the Starhead Estate and the National Trust Starhead Estate. The project found a surprising level of biodiversity at Starhead, a total of 128 plants, 248 moths, 13 bats and 26 bird species. I think that's totally surprising, because in all the years I've lived here, I've only recorded 3 bat species, 2 of which are found in our garden, and 1 of which is because I found a dead and desiccated long-eared bat many years ago. This is fascinating, and they have said that there are 4 key structural features particularly important for increasing biodiversity in conifer-dominated stands. 1. Lower basal area, which facilitates the development of an understory. 2. Inclusion of broadleaf trees within the forest. 3. Providing a patchy and open canopy. And 4. Greater quantities of deadwood. Now, the thing about this is particularly interesting because although lots of people, including those jolly nice people at the Forestry Commission over the years, have said that they are providing, that a lot of areas in Britain have been providing a green and fertile habitat for biodiversity. Until recently, the Forestry Commission had been planting their conifer plants, their conifer trees, very close together in regimented rows, and there has been no room for any of the native species, and without any of the native food plants, the native insects don't have anywhere to thrive, and without the native insects, the bats and the birds stick to the margins of the forests, which is where the insects live and where they can feed and thrive. I think this is a fascinating survey, although these 4 answers are not ones that I am surprised to hear, but I'm very pleased to have my suspicions validated. Now, there's something else here as well, which I think is really good. They've been working with the National Allotment Society to create a range of resources supporting a campaign that will inform and encourage butterfly and moth-friendly inclusions within allotments and highlighting the benefits of doing so for both people and wildlife. That's jolly good. They also run the annual Big Butterfly Count, involving tens of thousands of citizen scientists across the UK. Their records provide the foundation of scientific evidence that underpins much of their work. This year they explored the impact that taking part has had on the participants themselves in a new collaboration with the Nature Connectedness Research Group at Derby University. The study showed that participation is associated with increased nature connectedness, decreased anxiety, and increased noticing of butterflies and nature. Such improvements were linked to the strength of people's well-being and emotional experience of taking part. Now, this is something which I'm very, very, very insistent on trying to ram down people's throats as much as I can. The late Gerald Durrell, who was one of my great inspiration, and still is, wrote that all the people and all the animals in the world are interconnected, and as the global biodiversity and the different biotopes are weakened and beginning to fall apart, so are the people who live in these countries. And if we don't have a strong and healthy environment, the human race, like every other species, is going to suffer, and suffer greatly. I think this is so important. This is something that one cannot underline far enough, and it is something which I hope and pray that everybody watching this show takes on board and does their best as a result to improve the corner of the environment in which they particularly live. They've also launched a new volunteer training program, which I think is fantastic. Butterfly conservation volunteers support every corner of the organisation, from practical conservation to recording, engagement and communication. It's therefore vital that we invest in them. This year has seen the launch of a new volunteer training program which allows volunteers to access videos and other resources to support them in their role, which we have made available online where possible. As this is more flexible, accessible, reduces travel and the impact on the environment. They also offer online drop-in sessions for volunteers where questions can be answered directly by staff and everyone gets to meet new people. I think that's an absolutely fantastic thing to do. So far I don't think there's anything that they've said that I don't endorse wholeheartedly. And they are also bringing wild spaces to schools across the UK. They have plans to transform 100,000 wild spaces across the UK, and they have brought lots of exciting opportunities for their work in schools. Our education project has sought to introduce primary-age children to butterflies and moths throughout the hands-on workshops and outdoor learning opportunities. In aligning their school's work with wild spaces, they're now placing much greater emphasis on school grounds as viable potential habitat and a fantastic learning resource. They've developed simple tools to help children survey their school grounds to identify which elements are missing, and have been designing follow-up lesson plans and record sources for teachers. Due to their great success of their fundraising appeal, they are ready to launch the Discover and Learn Hub, a new section of their website filled with ideas and resources for learning, creating and taking action. Absolutely fantastic. Right on, brothers and sisters. And if that makes me sound like an old hippie, well, look at me. I am an old hippie, so get used to it. They have got something called the Landscapes Programme, which is thinking bigger, and their new programme aims to improve the condition of 100 landscapes for butterflies and moths. It's a commitment to achieve more by expanding on some of their most recent successful work, and as well as improving connections between habitat patches to encourage species movement. But with biodiversity continuing to decline, it's more important than ever that they continue building well-connected, species-rich landscapes that are more resilient to rapid changes in climate and can provide space for all wildlife to thrive. They've done a special study of the magnificent moths of Kent. Their biggest moth conservation project combines focused action with 8 threatened species with activities in local communities to raise awareness of the wonder and value of moths. Supported by a grant from National Heritage Lottery Fund, they took approaches to saving species at scale. Their focus was on improving habitats in grassland, woodland and shingle beaches, for threatened species, including working to improve habitat quality and increase connectivity between sites, as well as examining how moths are responding to the rapidly changing climate. For example, by training volunteers to search for eggs of the fiery clearwing, they've demonstrated that it's rapidly changing its distribution and spreading inland, which could be critical to its survival, as its former coastal colonies are vulnerable to flooding. I'm only paraphrasing a lot of this, but it is absolutely fantastic, and I'm so proud that for the last 14 years I've been supporting this fantastic organisation. They've done a case study about the high brown fritillary on Dartmoor. It was at a 20-year high at some of its sites this year, and 13 of the 14 monitored sites were occupied and 5 achieved their highest counts. The long-term population trend for Dartmoor shows a significant increase of 165% since 2002, providing evidence that recovery is possible even for some of Britain's most threatened butterflies. Now, they also do a lot to tackle threats for nature. And let's look at this. In December last year, they took part in a joint non-government organisation campaign in the lead-up to the United Nations Biodiversity Conference, COP15, in Montreal. The conference was focused on how the world could halt and reverse biodiversity loss, which is one of the most pressing issues facing our planet. Whether or not you believe in anthropogenic climate change, I do. But I know that some people, for various reasons, don't. Nobody can deny the biodiversity crisis and the way that so many species, both locally, regionally, and across the world, are becoming extinct. They did a big campaign to the public to inform them of the risks to biodiversity, the consequences of nature loss, and the need to petition MPs to take action. The campaign asked the government, the UK government, to support 5 key outcomes. 1. Halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030. 2. Set 2030 goals that will prevent extinctions, recover species populations, and retain and restore habitats. Effectively protect 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030. Set 2030 targets which will reduce the negative pressures that humans put on nature globally by 50%, and provide the money and resources needing to restore nature whilst empowering local people and indigenous communities and holding countries accountable. That's one of the things that's wrong with the world these days. Everybody makes good promises and says, yes, we're going to do that, we believe in this, but nobody holds anybody accountable, and accountability has got to be one of the most important facets of any campaign to achieve anything. Well, back in February of this year, they published the latest comprehensive assessment of the UK's butterfly populations, using 23 million observations from citizen scientists. The report charts long-term changes in the abundance and distribution of butterflies. The overall reports provide strong evidence of the decline in British butterflies since the 1970s. The next important thing they talk about is managing land sustainably. I think in a way this is the most important section of this report, but I am not going to read it all. I'm just going to once again praise you and read you the opening paragraph. As the programme enters its 5th and final year, one of its legacies will be the drawing together of examples of good practice around the 4 countries of the United Kingdom. These will be presented as case studies and shared through the land use portal. The programme has given advice on creation of species-rich grasslands to improve their biodiversity value. Much of the work has targeted road verges, but has included advice on management of parks and open spaces, restorations of quarries and landfills, and creation of butterfly banks. This emphasis has been on promoting native perennial wildflowers, which provide food plants and nectar for butterflies and moths. And then talking about enabling the platforms of success. In 2022, they published an updated red list of British butterflies which categorises half Britain's remaining species as threatened, endangered or vulnerable, or near threatened. Unfortunately, 5 more species were classified as threatened this year. However, the list found some cause for optimism, with the large blue butterfly, which went extinct in Britain just over 40 years now classed as near threatened, following a successful reintroduction project. I could talk quite a lot about this reintroduction project, but I'm not going to. I'll leave that to another day. But this is one of the few matters on which I have slight issues with the people who are in charge of the safety and safeguarding of Britain's butterflies. Now, what is very good here is that they provide lists of what their future priorities are going to be. I'm not going to read them to you because it's too long, but again, just as I am impressed on the way that they talk about the need for accountability, the fact that they're not just full of open promises, but they explain what they're going to do next year and what they're going to do the year after. In fact, between 2024 and 2026, I think is absolutely fascinating and gives me more and more respect for this organisation. They have financial reviews, financial statements, and other things, and financial information which are interesting and indeed vitally important for people like me who are members of the organisation, but would be dull as ditch water if I read them through to you, because there's no way of praising them to make them interesting. It's just lists of figures, but they're very important figures. And at the end, which I think is very sweet, they thank all of us who have helped them over the years. And I really, truly cannot tell you enough of how much I admire this organisation, and I really seriously suggest that all of you, if you're not already members, go out and join it. It is a wonderful, wonderful organisation, and I cannot recommend them enough. I was going to read you through the contents of the other envelope which has arrived, which I haven't opened, but I'm not going to do that this week because I've already seen that we've overshot by about 8 minutes. So I'm going to leave that for next midweek's On the Track Extra. So until then, are you listening, Mr. McCrinnan? I'll be